My in-laws really pushed me to sign a marriage contract, and they were overjoyed when I got $20 million. I'm Chloe. Most people would describe me as quiet and reserved. I work as a lab assistant, which I like because it means less talking and more focusing on details. My life is pretty routine: work, home, and the occasional hangout with my friend Lisa, who is very outgoing and energetic. Tonight, she somehow got me to go to one of her wild house parties. Chloe, you need to stop being so shy. It's just a few friends, and you might even enjoy yourself, she said, almost dragging me out of my apartment. When we got there, it was clear how different we were. Lisa was having a great time, laughing and chatting with everyone. Meanwhile, I was stuck against the wall, holding a soda like it was my only comfort. The music was too loud, the crowd was overwhelming, and I felt like I was just trying to disappear into the background. "Hey, you made it!" Lisa yelled over the music as she ran back to me with a guy following her. "Chloe, this is Tom. Tom, this is my best friend Chloe." Tom was a handsome guy, tall with a charming smile that probably helped him a lot. "Nice to meet you, Chloe. Want something stronger than soda? It might help you relax," he said with a grin, looking at my drink. I gave a small smile. "No thanks. I'm fine with this." Lisa winked at me before getting caught up with another group of friends, leaving me alone with Tom. It was super awkward. "So, Chloe, Lisa says you're the brains of the operation at work. A scientist, right?" Tom asked, leaning against the wall next to me. "I'm a lab assistant," I corrected, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I'm not really the brains, more like the hands." Tom laughed. "Modesty. Huh, that's rare." We ended up having a real conversation. Tom turned out to be easy to talk to, and as the night went on, I found myself talking about my life, my love for quiet weekends, and my secret passion for old detective novels. He really listened, and by the end of the night, I was actually laughing for real. "You know, you're nothing like I expected from Lisa's stories. You're cooler," Tom said sincerely. I raised an eyebrow. "And what did Lisa say about me?" "She said you were shy and introverted, but you're just chill, not uptight. It's refreshing." His words, strangely enough, didn't come across as condescending. They actually felt like a compliment, and from someone like Tom, it meant more than it probably should have. "Thanks, I guess. You're not too bad yourself for a party animal," I teased, realizing I didn't want the night to end just yet. "Party animal, huh? I might use that." He laughed, pulling out his phone. "Let me get your number. We should hang out somewhere quieter, where you don't have to yell over the music." I hesitated for a moment, my old fears whispering that it might be a mistake, but then I typed my number into his phone. "Okay, but if you make me go to another party, we're going to have a problem," I warned him. "Deal. No parties. Maybe just coffee or something," he promised with a smile that made me think maybe stepping out of my comfort zone wasn't such a bad idea after all. A few months after that party, things had become quite serious between us. I remember it was a chilly autumn evening when he proposed. We were walking through the park, leaves crunching under our feet, when he suddenly stopped and looked at me with eyes that seemed to see right into my soul. "Chloe, I've been thinking," Tom began, looking a bit nervous, which was unusual for him. He was usually so smooth. "I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're officially mine. Will you marry me?" He took out a small box from his pocket and opened it to show a simple but beautiful ring. I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I'll marry you." The happiness on his face was clear. We spent the rest of the evening dreaming about our future and making plans that felt like they were coming true. But the real challenge came when we decided it was time to meet his parents. Tom had mentioned them a few times, but he always kept the details vague. When the day arrived, we drove to their house in the suburbs. It was a big, grand place that showed off old wealth and pride. Tom held my hand tightly as we rang the doorbell, giving me a reassuring smile. His mom, Mrs. White, answered the door. Her smile was polite but didn't reach her eyes. "Thomas, you're here, and this must be Chloe," she said, her voice smooth but distant. Mrs. White led us into a fancy sitting room where Mr. White was waiting. He looked serious and had a sharp gaze that seemed to be evaluating me. "So, Chloe, Tom tells us you work in a lab. That must be interesting," Mr. White said, his tone making it clear he wasn't impressed. "It's rewarding work," I replied, trying to stay calm despite the judgment I felt with every word. "We were quite surprised to hear about the engagement," Mrs. White said. "Weren't we, dear?" She looked at her husband, who nodded stiffly. "Yes, quite unexpected, Chloe. We want what's best for Tom, and I hope you understand that," Mr. White added, his words heavy with unspoken meaning. Tom quickly spoke up. "Mom, Dad, I love Chloe, and she makes me happy. That's what really matters, right?" "Of course, dear, but you need to be practical too," Mrs. White said, her eyes cold and calculating. "We'd like you both to consider signing a prenuptial agreement. It's just a formality, really, to protect both your futures." I felt conflicted. My heart ached at how formal and businesslike this was, especially when it should have been a joyful moment. But I loved Tom, and if this was part of being with him, maybe it was worth it. "If you think it's best," I said finally, trying to hide the hurt in my voice. "We believe it's for the best," Mr. White confirmed, handing us a folder with the documents. "Take a look and let us know what you think." The drive back was quiet. I kept thinking about the papers in my lap, but I figured that love was worth taking a chance, even if it meant signing a document to prove it. On a crisp early spring morning, we got married. The ceremony was in a small local church with just a few close friends and family. I remember standing in front of a small mirror in a modest white dress that Lisa had helped me pick out, feeling both excited and nervous. "Girl, you look stunning. Tom won't know what hit him," Lisa said as she adjusted my veil. Her enthusiasm was contagious and made me feel a bit more at ease. "Yeah, I just hope everything goes smoothly," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Don't worry, it's your day. Just focus on you and Tom," she said, giving me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The ceremony was short and sweet. Tom looked great in his suit, and when he saw me walking down the aisle, his smile gave me all the reassurance I needed. Even though my in-laws had pressured me into signing a marriage contract and were thrilled when I inherited $20 million, the ceremony felt right. We exchanged simple but heartfelt vows, and when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife and Tom kissed me, the polite applause felt genuine. At the reception, which was a small gathering at a nearby restaurant, Tom's parents seemed distant. Tom's father, Mr. White, gave a brief toast. "We're here to celebrate Tom and Chloe," he said, his voice lacking warmth. "May your union bring you the happiness you seek." It felt so formal and cold, almost like a business transaction, but I focused on the people who were genuinely happy for us, like Lisa, who was already on her third glass of champagne and excitedly telling anyone who would listen about how Tom and I met. The day ended, and with it, our simple but meaningful wedding wrapped up. We drove to our new home, Tom's place, where I would be moving in. It was a nice house, not too far from his parents, which meant his mom, Mrs. White was over a lot. Every time she visited, she casually reminded me that everything in the house was Tom's and that I couldn't claim any of it in case of a divorce. "Remember, Chloe, none of this is yours," she'd say with a smile that made my skin crawl. I'd just smile awkwardly, trying to hide my discomfort. Tom would laugh it off, giving me a hug. "Mom's just joking. Don't take her seriously." He'd chuckle, but his laughter never reached his eyes. It was clear this was her way of reminding me that I was an outsider. I hoped things would get better and that Tom would eventually see how his mother's comments were affecting our newlywed happiness. I tried to make the best of it, focusing on setting up our home to make it feel like ours, not just Tom's. But no matter how hard I tried, Tom's parents, especially Mrs. White, made it challenging. "Chloe, dear, why don't you rearrange these dishes? They should be organized better," Mrs. White would say during her frequent visits, her tone condescending as she inspected the kitchen cabinets I had just tidied. I'd force a polite smile, gripping the edge of the countertop tightly. "Of course, I'll take care of it," I'd reply, trying to keep my frustration out of my voice. Tom usually shrugged off his mother's comments. "She just likes things a certain way. You know how it is," he'd say, dismissing it too quickly. But it wasn't just about the dishes. It felt like nothing I did was right. One evening, while Tom and I were trying to enjoy a quiet dinner, his dad, Mr. White, showed up unannounced. "Watching your spending, I hope. Remember, it's Tom's money paying for all this," he said casually, looking over the food on the table. I bit my lip, feeling hurt by his words. "We're careful with our budget," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But the criticism didn't stop there. Tom's parents seemed determined to remind me of my place at every opportunity. "Just make sure you keep the house clean for Tom. He works so hard. He shouldn't have to come home to a mess," Mrs. White would say, her concern dripping with false kindness. And it wasn't just behind closed doors. Even in public, they found ways to belittle me. At a family gathering, I overheard Mrs. White talking to a relative. "You know, Chloe doesn't earn much. She pretty much lives off Tom, doesn't she?" The interference from Tom's parents didn't stop at comments. They started acting like the house was theirs too. They'd come over, flop down on the sofa, and demand, "Chloe, make us some coffee, will you? Or we're out of snacks. Could you run to the store?" It felt like I had become more of a maid than a family member. And Tom seemed to change too. He used to be caring and attentive, but now he joined in their laughter. One day, while I was folding laundry, he said, "You're folding these all wrong, Chloe, just like my mom showed you. Remember?" His tone was light, but the criticism hurt. His parents laughed along, and Mr. White added, "She's got to learn somehow. You can't baby her forever, Tom." The worst part was how Tom criticized everything about me, from how I managed the house to my choice of clothes. "You're going out in that?" he'd ask, his disapproval clear as he looked at my casual jeans and t-shirt. I felt like I was losing not just the battle to win over his parents but also the man I thought I had married. The man who once looked at me with love now scrutinized me with the same critical eyes as his parents. Each day became harder, and the atmosphere at home felt more suffocating. I started dreading mornings, knowing I'd face another day of hidden insults and open disdain. The stress of living under constant scrutiny was taking a toll on me. I began losing weight, had restless nights, and faced long days of anxiety. It all came to a head one morning at work when I collapsed amid the test tubes and beakers in my lab. I woke up in the hospital, the bright white of the room initially blinding. I felt a dull ache in my stomach, and my head was spinning as I tried to sit up. A nurse hurried over. "Take it easy, Chloe. You gave us quite a scare, she said, helping me adjust the pillows behind my back. What happened? I asked, my voice barely audible. You passed out at work. They brought you in with severe dehydration and stress-related symptoms, she explained, adjusting the foredrip connected to my arm. I sighed, realizing the gravity of my situation. The door to my room opened, and Lisa walked in, her face full of worry. Chloe, I heard what happened. Are you okay? She asked, rushing to my side and taking my hand. I guess I'm not, I said, trying to force a smile. This is ridiculous, Chloe. You can't keep going like this, Lisa said, her voice stern with concern. I knew she was right, but the thought of returning to that house and facing Tom and his parents again made me anxious. I just nodded, unable to trust my voice. The next day, as I lay there flipping through a magazine, a man in a suit appeared at the doorway. Chloe Roberts? He asked, stepping into the room. Yes, that's me. Can I help you? I asked, puzzled since I didn't recognize him. I'm Mr. Harris, a notary. I have some unexpected news for you. You've been named as the sole heir to your great-uncle's estate. He passed away last month, and it seems you are to inherit $20 million, he said, handing me a stack of documents. I blinked, stunned. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Did you say $20 million? Yes, Miss Roberts, it's all in these documents. Your great-uncle left everything to you. Mr. Harris confirmed, handing me the papers. I was in shock. I barely knew him, but he remembered me. If you have any questions or need help with the inheritance process, I'm here to assist, Mr. Harris offered. The news was overwhelming. As Mr. Harris left, my mind raced with the possibilities. My phone beeped with a text from Tom, the first since I'd been hospitalized. Hey, heard about your uncle. Sorry for your loss. How are you feeling? The message read. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of emotions. Suddenly wealthy, I felt more isolated than ever. Getting better, I texted back, not ready to share the news of the inheritance. Later that evening, as I lay in the hospital bed, overwhelmed by the day's revelations, I made a decision. I couldn't return to my old life. With this inheritance, I had the chance to change everything. The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. Tom and his parents came to visit later. They hadn't visited since I'd been admitted, which spoke volumes, but today they were all smiles and concern. Tom walked in first, followed by his parents. Hey, Chloe, how are you feeling today? He asked, his tone overly sweet. I adjusted myself in bed. Better. Thanks, I said, watching them closely. Mrs. White approached my side, her voice full of concern that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Chloe, we've been so worried about you, she said, brushing her hand against mine. That's kind of you, I said, pulling my hand back slightly. Mr. White stood at the foot of my bed, arms crossed. Yes, well, we're family. We take care of our own, he said, though it felt like a rehearsed line. Tom sat down next to me, taking my hand again. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. That's all, he said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, feeling their intense scrutiny. Their concerns seemed unusually focused. I appreciate that. As their visit went on, their questions about my health started to feel more invasive than caring. So, when do the doctors say you can leave the hospital? Mrs. White asked, studying me closely. Soon, I hope. I'm starting to feel a lot better, I replied, trying to keep my answers vague. After a few more minutes of strained conversation, they left, promising to return soon. I lay back, feeling uneasy. Their visit felt off, with questions that seemed too pointed and cautious. Once they were gone, I decided to follow them and see what they were up to. I quietly dressed and trailed them at a distance toward the parking lot. Hiding around the corner of the building, I overheard their conversation. "That stupid cow doesn't know what's coming," Tom said crudely. "She thinks we care about her. This is just until we get that money and make sure she gets pregnant soon. If she has a kid, she won't leave, and then we're really in control." Mrs. White added viciously. Hearing them speak so callously and plotting to trap me was the final straw. My heart raced with anger and resolve. I had seen their true colors, and it was worse than I had imagined. I slipped back to my room unnoticed, my mind racing. Their treachery was clear, and so was my path forward. For the first time in my life, I knew I had to stand up for myself. I wasn't going to be their victim any longer. When I was discharged from the hospital, the thought of returning home filled me with both dread and determination. As I walked through the door, I saw Tom and his parents sitting in the living room, their faces forced into smiles. Mrs. White had even gone so far as to cook my favorite dish, spaghetti carbonara, which sat steaming on the dining table. The effort to appear like a caring mother-in-law felt almost theatrical, like a scene from a bad play. Tom rushed over with an exaggerated smile. "Chloe, you're back. We missed you so much," he said, pulling me into a hug that I didn't return. "Thanks, Tom," I said, gently pulling away. I looked around at the overly staged setting, my resolve strengthening. As we sat down to eat, the tension was palpable. They were trying too hard to act normal, but I could see the impatience in Tom's eyes. It didn't take long before he got straight to the point. "So, Chloe, when do you think you'll get the inheritance? There's so much we can do with it," he asked, trying to sound casual but coming off as eager. I set down my fork and looked him directly in the eye. "Tom, it doesn't concern you because I'm filing for divorce," I said calmly, sliding the divorce papers across the table toward him. The room fell silent for a moment before Mrs. White let out a terrible scream. "Chloe, have you lost your mind? Think about what you're doing," she shouted. Tom's expression shifted from shock to desperation. "Chloe, please. I love you. We can fix this. Don't throw away our marriage over a misunderstanding," he begged, his voice cracking. But I was done with the lies. "A misunderstanding?" I repeated sharply. "Calling me a stupid cow behind my back isn't a misunderstanding. I heard everything, Tom, everything." Mrs. White's face flushed red with barely contained rage. "You ungrateful girl. We'll sue you for half of that inheritance, you'll see." I reached into my bag and pulled out a copy of the prenuptial agreement. "Actually, you won't," I said, tossing it onto the table. "This says otherwise. You can't touch my inheritance." Tom and his parents stared at the document, their faces paling. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I found a small apartment in a quiet part of town where mornings were filled with birdsong rather than bickering. It wasn't just a new place, it was a fresh start. I spent the first week settling in, buying a few pieces of furniture and some plants, making it truly mine. The silence was a stark contrast to the constant tension I had lived with, and I loved it. I began to fully appreciate the peace I had been missing. One Saturday morning, while enjoying a cup of coffee on my balcony, Lisa burst through the door with her usual energy, carrying a box of pastries. "Chloe, this place is fantastic," she exclaimed, setting the box on my new kitchen counter and hugging me tightly. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I have in years, honestly," I replied, pouring her a cup of coffee. "It's like I can finally think straight without all the noise." Lisa chuckled as she sipped her coffee. I told you, you just needed to get out of that madhouse. So what's next for our free woman? She asked, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. I've been thinking about that a lot, I said, leaning against the counter. For now, I'm just enjoying the peace and planning my next step. Eventually, I want to buy a big house and get involved in charity work. As the weeks went by, I embraced my newfound independence, meeting with a notary to handle the inheritance details. But, as expected, the tranquility didn't last forever. One evening, my phone rang, interrupting my reading. It was Tom. Chloe, please, can we talk? I've been thinking, Anne. Tom, there's nothing left to say, I interrupted, my voice firm but tired. Just hear me out. I miss you, and I was wrong, he pleaded, his voice breaking with emotion. I'm sorry for everything. Can we try again? Tom, it's over. We can't undo what's been done. You need to accept that, I said, ending the call. Soon after, Mrs. White started leaving messages on my voicemail. Each one was more desperate and angry than the last. You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you, she yelled in one of the messages. I deleted them without hesitation. Tom later told me that he and his parents were fighting a lot, with him blaming them for pushing the prenuptial agreement, which now protected me from their greed. Each call and each desperate plea only reinforced my decision to move on. I was moving forward, not back. The chaos and drama of that family were no longer my concern.